Hey, welcome to the Movie Club. I'm Miro.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Davinia.
And today we're talking about movie The Fountain. I picked this wonderful thing. It's basically about three stories from the past, present, and the future about men dealing with death of a loved one. First is from the past. A conquistador in Mayan country searches for the Tree of Life to free his queen from the Inquisitor. Then the second from the present timeline is a medical researcher working on the medicine to cure all and prevent death to save his dying wife from a brain tumor. And then the last storyline is a space traveler traveling with an aged tree encapsulated within a bubble, which moves toward a dying star that's wrapped in a nebula.
Xibalba, not just any dying star, Xibalba.
I'm sorry. He travels to the nebula Xibalba. He seeks eternity with his love, which in this case is the tree. And the stories intersect and parallel. Quests fail and succeed. And the whole thing is the meditation on death and how we process it.
That was a pretty good summary.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. And it is a movie from 2006, directed by Darren Aronofsky and starring big star Hugh Jackman, right?
Starring
Indeed.
Wolverine Jackman. Wolverine Jackman.
And yeah, I would say I loved it. It is one of my all-time favorite movies. I can watch it over and over and over again, and I always get something new here. For example, graphics and design, the images we see with the space traveler, and also elsewhere, instead of CGI, the director Darren Aronofsky chose to do visual effects for the filming by using microphotography of chemical reactions on a tiny petri dish. He said that CGI would take away from the film timelessness, and he wanted the film to stand the test of time, which I think he succeeded enormously because the graphics and design is absolutely astonishing for me.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely no rebuttal. I'm shocked. Kyle agrees with me. Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
hey.
Yeah, it easily could have been one of my picks too. I also love this film.
It took Darren Aronofsky 7 years to make.
Can that be true? Because it only came out, I think, a couple of years after Requiem for a Dream.
So, I mean, productions stop and restart all the time.
Yeah, but I don't think there was 7 years between them.
Not between them. I'm telling you, productions start and stop all the time. Maybe he stopped and started making Requiem for a Dream and then returned to The Fountain.
Usually you don't make two films at once. Can that be right? Okay. If you say it's, if you say it's true, it's true. Do your own research, people.
Miro made his research, okay?
I do my research.
Give him credit.
And did you notice, Davinia, you know what is the name of the main character in the present timeline?
What is?
Tommy Creo.
Uh-huh.
And what does it mean in Spanish?
Oh, yeah.
Ah.
Yes. Creo, it's belief.
Belief. Yeah.
And it can also mean create.
Exactly. So there's all of this symbolism in there, all around the place. It's fun to watch several times, and you'll always be amazed.
Yeah, and for a film about death, it's actually has quite a hopeful message to it. And I think it's interesting to think about this one compared to the last movie that we watched, which was Mar Adentro, which is also about the acceptance of death to some degree. But I find this one a lot more moving and powerful, personally. And I like the optimistic feeling it gives you at the end.
What kind of optimistic feeling do you mean?
I think this movie is up for a lot of interpretation between the three different parts. It's clear that the Conquistador stuff is her book that she's written. It's clear that he is the space traveler and that really is the literal future and what happens. And so I don't actually see those as like two different stories, but just two different time periods with the same character. And essentially throughout the movie, he's trying to avoid the death of his loved one. And in doing so, he ends up having a lot of regrets about how he spent the last time with her, I would say. If the future is him as well, and it could be hundreds or thousands of years that have passed between those time periods, we can see that he's still, even though he's in this kind of more meditative, like there's a lot of Buddhist imagery in the future and sort of enlightenment imagery, but he still torments himself with memories of her and things that he didn't do with her, or the way he handled things, or the things that he was focused on. But I believe right up until the end that he still believes in going to this star, which is the underworld, that he can somehow bring her back or resurrect her. And what he realizes in the very end, in a moment of actual enlightenment, is that true freedom and eternity is through death. And it's through death that they'll actually be reunited and live together forever. And so he sees his death at the end as something joyous rather than something to fear or fight against.
As she said, death as an act of creation.
Right.
Yeah.
And the road to awe. So I actually do see it as like a kind of optimistic meditation on death. Some people could see it as hokey or whatever, and it's combining like a lot of Eastern religion with Western religion, and the imagery is pretty overt and in your face, but for some reason it works for me, even though it's really on the nose. Even the stuff in present day is kind of, oh, they just happen to find this serum that reverses aging and all this stuff. It's a little hokey, it's a little corny, but yeah, it's just filmed so well, and Hugh Jackman is so surprisingly, for me at the time when I first saw it, so
Man.
good.
He put a lot into it, Hugh Jackman. For example, for the last part, for the spaceman traveling Odyssey, he had to shave himself completely. He also did different postures for each character. The Conquistador is leaning forward to represent his unstoppable force and undying dedication and loyalty to Spain and his queen. Tommy, the researcher, is hunched usually to represent the weight of his research and his guilt for not spending enough time with his dying wife. And then the space traveler is usually standing straight and meditating.
Or jumping around like it's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yes.
One of the two. That's interesting that he
That is.
even thought on to that small detail.
Well, maybe he was directed. We don't know. Or
I
maybe
believe it was originally supposed to be Brad Pitt.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And Kate Blanchett. Kate Blanchett as the easy.
I'm glad it was these two. Turned out well.
This is why it took 7 years, because during pre-production, Pitt and Aronofsky had some creative differences, and Pitt left it to do Troy, that came out in 2004,
which was so great.
and the film was shut down.
Okay.
And the sets and props were auctioned off. Originally, they had a budget of 75 million, and in early 2004, with a smaller budget of only 35 million, only 35 million, right? Aronofsky got Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz to play Tom and Izzy. And Warner Bros. Had invested 20 million into the cancelled version and agreed to finance the new, cheaper version. So that's why it took 7 years,
Yeah, and I know that it was originally supposed to be like longer with more special effects and kind of this more grandiose thing, and so he had to kind of slim it down. And I think it was to the advantage because this is perfect 90-minute film experience.
Well, and all the visuals, as like Mir was pointing out before, I found him really good, really nice to look at. And also, one thing that I noticed more, because like this is like the second time for me watching this movie, is how well they keep the colors in every scene throughout like all the time periods.
Yeah.
You always have those golden lights or silver.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Now, this was a critical and financial failure, this film. Very mixed reviews from critics. I think it has about a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of major critics didn't like it at all. And it lost money. I think it only made 15 million on that budget. I think Aronofsky attributes it to the time period of when it came out, and that it wasn't the right time culturally, at least in the United States, for a movie that was meditating on death. And I do think it's a tough sell, but then you have something like Mar Adentro, which is praised by critics and won awards.
Isn't it also because it's biographic? The Mar Adentro is biographic and a Fountain is a fantasy creation.
Mar Adentro is a much easier thing to swallow for the average moviegoer, I'm sure. It's just a very simple... It is.
No.
Come on. You think that this movie is easier for the general audience than Mar Adentro?
Oh, you mean like to understand?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, then I agree with you.
No, I mean, half the people that saw this were probably like, why are they in these ancient, why is it like Indiana Jones right now?
Okay.
What's this stupid guy doing in his karate outfit in this bubble? No, and also I remember when I first saw the trailer. I mean, the trailer is a bit misleading, if I recall. Makes it seem like it's going to be more of an action, more stuff going on in the Mayan ruins, more sci-fi.
You know what? When the conquistador arrived to discover the Tree of Life on the Mayan pyramid, there was supposed to be a huge battle between Mayans and the Spanish conquistadors. However, the conquistador arrived only with 3 soldiers, and that was because of the budget cuts, right? So he had to take away the whole huge army that the conquistadors supposed to arrive there, and there were actually 20 real Mayans were flown into the Guatemala, and Fernando Hernandez, who played the Lord of Xibalba, who was the one with the flaming sword.
Yeah.
Only he could spoke English. So before shooting at the Mayan pyramid, the Mayans actually blessed the set
with a ritual sacrifice.
Which is ritual sacrifice of the Virgin.
It just goes to show you constraints are such a good thing on art. Not being able to just do whatever you want. Oh yeah, let's have this huge, large-scale battle between conquistadors and Mayans. Like, it's perfect the way it is, and it's great that it turned out that way. There's just 3 conquistadors left, and that's just so. I can't imagine the other version. I don't know.
Well, because this one's so good.
Now, do you guys agree with me that the future is real, or do you think that's some kind of a dream or metaphor? Or I don't know what I used to think about it, but it wasn't until this viewing where I was like, oh, it's like clearly just the future. Like, it's him. It's just him. They like really did make this drug. They really can like live forever now. And it would be this kind of thing of like, you'll die if you like decide to die.
I thought about it differently throughout my life as I watched it. At first, I thought about it as a story from the past and a dream for the future. And then now I think it might be a reincarnation, that he was the conquistador and he was the researcher, and then later in the future he was reincarnated space traveler.
But the conquistador, that's her book that she wrote. We could agree on that. Like, she wrote a book and he reads it, and that's what those scenes are. She's not really a reincarnation of Queen Isabel.
Maybe she's remembering her past life.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that it's just her book. But what the present and future are the thing that are, I think, more unclear. But I mean, reincarnation, he has the same tattoo. He has the same memories. I think it only really works if you think it's like truly him, still pining over her, still tormenting himself every day with her memory.
I have always thought that the future timeline was kind of more like metaphorical in a sense. Like, whenever he died, he like realized and we don't see it. But it didn't really happen. But now that you mentioned this, like, it makes me think that's totally what the guy would do. The guy from the present, right? Like, they discover this serum. He takes it because right up until the end, when he actually gets enlightened and sees for himself that no, that actually death is what's going to bring him back to her and makes it this nicer thing to do than just like torturing himself over and over. He would have totally like kept on living to try and bring her back from the dead. I think that was like the next goal he set for himself.
I think he believed when he got to Xibalba that it would bring her back.
Exactly. But then right at the end, he's like, no.
But he's excited.
Actually,
he's like,
dying
I'm going
is
to
like
die. He gets it then.
I'm going to die. Yeah.
And we get into the Buddhist motif in the future. And of course, the foundations of Buddhism are that all life is suffering, and enlightenment and death are a cessation of suffering, and to free yourself from attachments in life. So even though he's dressed in that manner and there's a lot of the Buddhist symbolism, he hasn't actually embraced the ideals of Buddhism until the end. And that's when he reaches enlightenment while he's floating around in the mandala stuff. Very cool effect. It's just that he's actually he's kept himself away from her for longer than necessary if he would have just accepted life and death.
With this movie, you can chew it all day long and arrive at different conclusions, different motifs.
Also, I think she's really great in the movie too, Rachel Weisz, because playing that part, it's very easy to play that part the wrong way and to make that kind, at least for me, maybe I get more annoyed than people do easily, but that kind of dying person who's gets it now, for me, that can feel like very easily go wrong.
I very much liked her as the queen. She used her just like a small conversation voice, and then suddenly she raised it. For example, when the conquistador discussed the myths with the priest, when he told her that there is a tree of life and they have to find it, and the conquistador said, no, it's just you dare bother us with these yarns of pagans. Just listen to that scene.
A special tree sprouts there. They say whoever drinks of its sap will live forever.
Eternal life. Spain's fate hangs at the whims of a merciless enemy. You dare taunt us with these pagan yarns?
They are not yarns.
No, our own Bible says so.
The Bible says so.
Yeah, I really do enjoy that past timeline. It's really well done. For like the type of movie they're trying to do, really good.
I think this is the type of movie that you either love or hate. And I can understand people thinking it's kind of pretentious and over the top and grandiose and trying for more than it's able to grasp, but it just works for me. I mean, it is kind of a pretentious film, but it's just the tone and the color and the, and the brevity, the length of it is so perfect, and that somehow, and the theme is so universal, and it's just got imagery that you just don't see in a lot of Hollywood films, and just very interesting.
And it wasn't too long, right?
Meanwhile, what's the message of Requiem for a Dream? Just that drugs are going to fuck up your life.
Yeah.
And, if you don't do drugs, or you're going to end up getting butt fucked and lose your arm and you'll be dead.
Yeah.
And obviously heroin's bad, but it just doesn't touch a nerve with me like this film does. And that one just feels so much more like a panic film from the 40s about like reefer madness, like smoke weed and you're going to go crazy and stuff. It just feels like a public service announcement, whereas this actually feels like a meditation on death and life and love.
Food for thought.
All right. I officially open the rating part.
And you're first.
Alrighty.
I'm first. And I will give this 10 out of 10. Thank you.
10 out of... Wow.
This is the top for me. So, yes. 10 out of 10. I went there, Kyle. Yes.
Okay. Wow. 10 out of 10.
So, Davinia.
Okay. Well, for me, it's 8. Well, I mean, not everything can be a 10. 10s are really hard to give away, but 8 is way above average.
So, what was missing for the 2 points?
Well, because there's always better, right? You can always dream of something better.
You reserve 10 for non-existent fantasy movies that...
You never know. You never know.
Well, I'm going to rate this one. I'm waffling between I really like the film, but I'm waffling between a 7 and an 8. But I think I'm going to give The Fountain an 8 as well, because it's just one that just works for me, despite the fact that I'm quite sensitive to pretentiousness or to pretension and things like that. But it just works. So Wolverine can almost make me cry.
Oh, man.
All right, and that's it, folks. You just heard our review of The Fountain. Our average rating for this one was 7.7 out of 10. Let us know what you think on Twitter at movieclub_pod. And we'd be really happy if you could rate us as well on your favorite podcast platform. And you can also find more movie reviews by the Movie Club there. You can join Movie Club and support us by visiting our Patreon page and subscribing to one of our membership tiers. The link's going to be in the description of the episode. Next week, we're talking about the cook, the thief, his wife, and her lover. So watch that, and don't forget to check out the episode. Later.